Alolan Meowth, Galarian Meowth, Cronian Meowth! Welcome back to the Croneo Region, my Fakemon region based on Scotland with a touch of Canada. So here's the first regional variant of the video, Cronian Meowth. It's a fighting type. This is partly to do with the Wildcat inspiration, like with the Ochcat line, but I was hoping to evoke more of the Scottish Fold Cat, but more on that later. The typing was more of a product of me realising that all of Meowth's forms are weak to fighting, and I wanted mine to be the best, goddammit, although lore-wise it makes sense. As I'm sure you can no doubt tell, Cronian Meowth is clearly related to Galarian Meowth, as you can see from the hair and black elements. Galarian Meowth and Berserker are based on Vikings, who had many successful invasions in England, but Scotland was somehow able to fend them off for the most part. Also, Vikings found Scots to be persistently aggressive, so fighting makes a lot of sense. The orange coloration also works due to representing stereotypical Scottish ginger hair, as well as having the beard to show for it, but also it's a colour that represents the fighting type. Speaking of stereotypes, the main design theme of Galarian Meowth and Berserker is that they are stereotypical Vikings, so why not run with the idea of them being stereotypes and make them Scottish stereotypes? So what's so stereotypical about Cronian Meowth? First of all, look at where its coin is. The coin itself hasn't changed because that's an integral part of Meowth's design, but it's positioned to look like a sporran on a kilt made of fur. Kilts being traditional Scottish wear, that's a bit of cloth that wraps around you, that looks kinda like a skirt, and the sporran being the bag that you wear with it. Another stereotype it inhabits is our love for our infamous signature dish, haggis. If you don't already know what haggis is, you don't want to. But for the sake of education, it is the heart, liver and lungs of a sheep minced up with onions and some spices, cooked in some stock, and sometimes served in the sheep's stomach. It's actually not as gross as it sounds. It's great with some extra gravy, but normal minced meat is better. We love haggis so much up here that there's even a myth that it was actually its own very hairy animal. Hence the hair on the design. Now, when evolving a regional Meowth, Fakemon creators usually go down one of two routes. They either do a regional variant of Persian, like in Alola, or they do a brand new evolution, like Berserker. I'm doing neither. I'm going to do something I don't think I've seen before, and do a regional variant of Berserker. I'm doing this because of the canonical ties to Galar, the meta connection to Vikings, and it just fits. I could definitely see Cronian Meowth turn into an angry Scottish catman. The kilt aspect stays, so does the hairiness, since it's a Berserker. Two big things have been added. The first are the ears that more closely resemble the Scottish folds. I like to think they're under the helmet, which Cronian Berserker doesn't have, and there needs to be something instead of those horns. That plus the hair helps the head real estate not feel empty in lieu of the Viking horns and coin, which still acts as a sporran in this design. Now, time for the
great big bushy beard.
It's a bagpipe. Yup. If there's four things people think about when they think about Scotland, it's Iron Brew, we'll get to that some other time, haggis, kilts, and bagpipes. More specifically, it's a piper from a pipe band. They are people who play bagpipes. I thought it would be funny for Berserker to be bagpipe themed, due to the similar shape they have to haggis, and also being stereotypically tied. Since bagpipes are notoriously obnoxiously loud, I've decided to give it a new signature ability, Cacophony, which would make all sound-based status moves have the ability to deal damage, and boost the effects of any damaging sound moves, with all moves dealing physical or special damage depending on what does more. Fun fact, the ability Cacophony already exists. It was programmed into the Gen 3 games as a prototype for soundproof, but they never used it, so I'm bringing it back with a twist. Anyways, both haggis and bagpipes are typically made from the byproducts of sheep. I explained haggis earlier, but sheepskin has historically been used to make the bag part of bagpipes, so that's referenced through Cronian Berserker having a beard braid similar to Wooloo. I like to think it works similarly to the chanter reed, the bit of a bagpipe with holes used to make the tune, like a flute, recorder, or clarinet. I've also realised I didn't explain the Scottish Fold. It is the only breed of cat that originates in Scotland. They're kind of controversial to have due to the fact that they can experience health issues, much like pugs. But that's enough kitties, time to show some puppies! Before I do though, I kind of feel like I need a preamble for this too. So both Alola and Galar had regional variants of a normal type, which gained the dark type. Instead of copying the trend like I did with Meowth, What if I did the reverse, taking a dark type then turning it into a normal type? After all, Galarian Zigzagoon canonically came first. Meet Croneo Poochyena. Instead of being mean like its dark counterpart, it is now friendly, with kinder eyes and a smile instead of a growl. It does keep its teeth to maintain the fact that it's based on hyenas, which are more cat-like but look like dogs, hence why Pokemon and myself went all in on it being a dog. Since it's a normal dog, I wanted it to be based on a domestic breed. Collies are very popular, and they originate in Scotland, and England too, but I just looked at the Scottish breeds for inspiration. Its colours are specifically based on other normal types such as Eevee, Ferret and Linoon. Its evolution, Mightyena, now gains wings and the flying type. Okay, this looks like it came from nowhere, but I have my reasons. First of all, there will be a new evolution, and what that's based on really needs something else visually in my opinion. Secondly, yes, it's an M&J TV reference, particularly to Team Sky. Third, there's some mythology behind why a canine creature has wings. It isn't Scottish mythology, but it is based on the Hainu, a Japanese yokai, which can be loyal and loving if tamed as a pet. Considering the whole concept of the lion is a mean wild canine essentially being tamed to be pet-like, I think this works. I even had its tongue stick out because it's happy and excited because it's a good doggo. Finally, we get to the new evolution I talked about. Gloriana, which is a combination of Glory and Hyena stylized like the other two. It also sounds like Gloriana, which is a name, with ties to royalty and patriotism in the UK and whatnot, but I'd say that continues the loyalty theme. So I know what you're thinking. Why is Mightyena now furbait? Well, there is a Scottish myth called the Wolver, or is there? So, this is a weird one. It is commonly believed that it is a creature of Shetland Islands folklore, but others debate whether or not it was made up by someone claiming to be studying the folklore, but that doesn't answer the question. In fact, it complicates matters. Either way, it's still something tied with Scotland, so I don't see why I can't use this benevolent wolf-like humanoid creature. Now that answers the question. Admittedly, the Wolver is just a bipedal wolf, which does look a bit stern, but that's to give it some power. It is pure of heart, which does fit the normal type in my opinion. The wings I mentioned before make this design seem more complete. It also reinforces the benevolent theme I've been going for due to appearing like the stereotypical depiction of angels. That is all I have to say about these very good puppers. As someone who's basing their region on Scotland, I inevitably get asked if I'm going to make a Kelpie Pokemon, and the answer is yes. Here is Cronian Blitzel. I took the idea of a water horse and thought it would work well on the zebra Pokemon. As you can see, it is essentially just a water type Blitzel with seahorse elements, which makes sense. Seahorse, water horse, Kelpie. It all makes sense. I also wanted it to be smoother due to how that complements water types. Kinda like how Pointiness complements electric types, like the Unovan version. You may notice it's wearing a sort of seaweed scarf, which will be important in the evolution. Croneo Zebstrika, now water ghost type. Almost as a mirror to how Galarian Ponyta gains a secondary type when it evolves into Rapidash. Kelpies are shape-shifting spirits that live in locks, so that explains the typing. I mentioned the seaweed before and how they've become wings. They're semi-transparent because they're actually ghostly wings. We haven't had a Pegasus Pokemon yet, and I felt like having a Kelpie Ghost Pegasus Zebstrika would be really cool, and I was right. It also has a malevolent expression due to Kelpies preying upon humans. There's not really anything more to this design concept, but I don't think there needs to be. It's a Kelpie Pokemon and represents one of the most culturally important Scottish myths as a result. Also, there are many water horse myths in Scotland. The Kelpie is the most famous one. Croneo Zebstrika is basically representing all of them. So far, I don't think I've done anything that controversial. This will change now. Charizard's gotten a lot of love. All the Kanto starters have, but especially Charizard. So I just thought it would be funny to give it some more. Literally! Meet Cronian Charmander, a fairy type. It's full of love, putting the charm in Charmander. It's received so much love and adoration over the years that it is now completely infatuated. I also felt like basing this design on winged Pikmin from Pikmin 3, since I love that game, and felt it also fit the theme. Infatuation develops into romance with Cronian Charmeleon, which is shown with the rose it clutches in its mouth. A stereotypical romantic gesture, as is giving chocolates, symbolised through chocolate appearing on the strawberry, referencing some food which is exactly that, to emphasise love and romance. This line has a heart motif throughout, which I mention now, in time for its heart to break. Yeah, the theme is infatuation to romance to the inevitable death of any feeling of love and the futility of feeling it in the first place. Even though I don't believe in this personally, I felt this was an interesting direction to take Croneo and Charizard. even the strawberry is rotting away. I feel like the addition of the ghostly flames is a nice touch, since Greavard, another ghost type, had a flame on it. I felt like giving this Charizard variant some ghostly wispy flames still made it feel like Charizard, as well as giving an interesting visual. Oh yeah, and it's fairy ghost type, I don't know if I made that clear. I may end up doing variants for Venusaur and Blastoise too, but that will just depend on the demand for them really. So here's Croneo and Drednaw. It's water psychic type. Most generations have a Pokemon based on a turtle, so I looked up Scottish and or Canadian turtles and found the leatherback, which is a sea turtle that lives in a variety of places, including some of the coasts of Scotland and Canada. The smooth look on the leatherback contrasts perfectly with Galarian and Drednaw. Chewtle is also pretty smooth, so this still works. Also, no Croneo and Chewtle, since it's just mono water and I don't see how changing it would add to the concept. So why psychic? Well, when I looked at the leatherback turtles, the white spots on their back reminded me of stars that you'd see in the night sky or pictures of space. Why not extend that to nebulae? Nebulae, or nebulas, are these clouds in space which birth stars. Although pictures of them are slightly altered in order to actually visually see these clouds, these have to be some of the most beautiful natural phenomena I've ever seen. But yeah, that's it for Drednaw. So I think it's best just to say what this one is first. Meet Croneo and Cryogonal, water flying type. Since it's not quite liquid, but it is also water itself, but it's gaseous, so I just played it safe. Since we've had a few Pokemon reflecting on humanity's effect on the environment, I've decided to make a few myself. Although it has snowed in Scotland in recent years, it's overall a lot less than it used to, so perhaps doing a variant of Cryogonal would make sense. It has a couple of dex entries about how during warmer months it evaporates, turning into steam. Since the climate crisis is making more and more months warmer months, it only makes sense that this Pokemon would be in its gaseous form for longer periods, and even adjust to it to the point where if you give it the Featherstone, it will become a mon with the dumbest name ever. Cryogonal! It's a cloud now, and it also has Lightning Rod, which will deal with that pesky 4x electric weakness. Don't ask me how a cloud can be weak to rocks, and only rocks. Something which it shares with the previous stage is the water droplets replacing those weird glowy ice magic things that look like a moustache. It almost looks like it's crying, which still fits in with the climate theme. Since it can still be cold, especially around New Freezington, you can still get Unovan Cryogonal, it just won't evolve. Meanwhile, not only does Croneo and Cryogonal evolve, but Cryogonal also has a secondary form. Not an evolution, as I felt this idea made more sense, and Cryogonal already had a solid base stat total to begin with, so making it the base stage in a 3-stage line made no sense to do in my opinion. So, in a similar fashion to the Rotom catalogue, if you use the Imbalancer item on Cryogonal, it exits its Cumulus form and enters its Nimbus Stratus form. It's now a dark storm cloud, swapping water flying for electric flying. It now has Storm Drain instead of Lightning Rod, sort of as a mirror to its other form. It trades a bit of its defensive stats for some more speed. The only real ties to Scotland these guys have is that it's cloudy most of the time. That's it. This is a concept I've wanted to do since I first started working on this project all the way back in 2020. In fact, it's the first Fakemon I conceptualized for the Croneo region at all, and the concept hasn't changed too much. So how fitting is it that Cryogonal is the ace of the flying type gym leader, Harper? Which form, I hear you ask? Whichever one is better against your team composition. So I hope you like this design. Cryogonal really deserves more love. Despite recently becoming a trend, I've had the idea to do Croneo Sinistea for a while now. 2 drinks Scotland is well known for is our most consumed drink outside of water, Iron Brew, and one of, if not our biggest exports, whiskey. So I decided to give Sinistea an additional poison typing, making it the first ghost poison type since Gen 1, since alcohol is a form of poison. It's also in a whiskey glass now instead of a teacup. Since many of them come in interesting geometric patterns, it made sense to make the face into one. The artist and I were experimenting with colours for this Pokemon to be, and we decided to try and make it a colour similar to whiskey itself, with a pinkish purple accent colour to indicate its poison. It evolves into Croneo and Poltegeist, using the Malt Barrel. Firstly, I don't see the need to make its evolution into a new Pokemon, considering how I don't see any significant change in what the Pokemon inherently is. And second, I didn't see why I needed to keep the phony and authentic forms. Perhaps that would be a thing if this ever became a game, but I don't see how you could tell with the design. Unless if it were a 3D game, which I doubt this would ever be. We wanted to keep the general design language of Poltegeist, except for the fact that it's got its hand on its cap, like someone would do while hungover. It also adheres to the naked person in a barrel trope, which adds to the comedy of this design. And to top it all off, its facial expression emphasises all of this. So, how did you like those regional variants? Comment below what regional variants you'd want to see next. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, share, ring the notification bell, check out the Croneo Region's Instagram, as well as my Patreon page if you want to support the series. Something I don't plug nearly as much is my Discord server, which should be in the link tree in the description. And I'll see you next time, where we get to talk about my favourite Pokemon, and how I'm planning to tackle it in Croneo. See you guys then!